Hi, folks. Welcome to the live show. Thanks for joining me today. It's my privilege, blessing, and honor to welcome Dr. David Janda, MD. We've been talking about doing something like this for a long time. A lot of you listening and even in the huddle pay attention to what Dr. Janda has to say, reference his commentary often. So you're going to appreciate this show and what perspective he brings tonight. Dr. David Janda, MD, was a practicing orthopedic surgeon based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and a member of a 9-member orthopedic surgery group from 1989 until his retirement from medical practice on January 1st, 2017. Dr. Janda is also the director and founder of the Institute for Preventative Sports Medicine based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is the only healthcare cost containment organization of its kind in North America. Wow. Could we use some of that right now? He's the author of The Awakening of a Surgeon. Dr. Janda is the host of the Operation Freedom radio show. Many of you are familiar with that. Broadcasts every Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And I know it's on an AM station there in the Detroit area, so you can tune into that. Go to his website, by the way. Jared, if you have that up, it's davejanda.com. Dave Janda, there you go. There's the website, davejanda.com. That's 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. And of course, you can tune in live on his website, davejanda.com. Dr. Dave, thanks for joining me today.
Pastor Mike, it's an honor to be with you and to be with your listening audience. I thank you very much.
Well, thank you. 675 days. 675 days now. And the Mueller report is complete, not released, but tidbits of it are starting to make its way to the media. I had someone, Dave, send me a video. President Trump was in Lima, Ohio, one day last week, right across the road from where I work. And so that was big news here. Somebody sent me this clip, and they said, Lima and President Trump's visit was more important than people think. So let's look at this clip, and then we'll jump into the conversation. The first one. Yes.
The biggest political scandal in American history. I really believe what that is. I listened a little bit ago to what you were saying about the history of this, and I think people need to remember this actually likely dates back to late 2015, early 2016, and this began nothing more, nothing less than a Clinton-Obama operation with a bunch of dirty cops at the FBI and career Justice Department officials that were all part of it.
Well, with that music, that
Thank you, Jared.
Lori Ingram.
Thank you, Jared. Yeah. So, Dave, the meltdown of the left has officially begun. I know you track this, and you're paying attention to what's going on. All of the Trump haters really, and I don't want to overstate this, Dave, but the Trump haters, the America haters, there seems to be a synergy there. And even Christian never-Trumpers are having a very, very hard time with this report coming out, indicating that there's not going to be any more indictments. What are you hearing, Dave?
Well, a couple things. For over 2 years, Pastor Mike, I have been, and anyone who's tried to present the truth has been denigrated, has been threatened, has been harassed for speaking the truth. Over 2 years ago, Pastor Mike, on my platform, myself and a number of the guests I brought forward, predicted this result from the Mueller report, that there would be no evidence of, and collusion. Collusion is not a law. Okay, what they're really speaking about, what they accused the president of doing, was involved in treasonous activity. Treason is what they accused him of. And over 2 years ago, we came forward and said there was no interaction between Citizen Trump, President-elect Trump, President Trump, his staff, his team, his campaign with the Russian government. Now, because we were, and we listed the reasons why we believed that. And we also listed about how this fake Russian hoax came into being and who was behind it. For telling people the truth, threats, harassment, denigrated, all the way up until Friday evening at approximately 5 o'clock. And then all of a sudden, after 2 years of this, it stopped. No more threatening emails or phone calls, or it stopped.
Yeah.
And frankly, I'm not one, and I don't believe we should give a free pass to those that have put our country through this for at least the past 2 years. You know, in that clip you just had on Pastor Mike, Devin Nunes is one of the good guys. He's one of the guys who was denigrated, harassed, threatened, targeted. There's something he said that I think is wrong. And what he said that I believe is wrong is where he said, well, this has been going on since 2015, 2016. Pastor Mike, this entire operation, I believe, started as far back as January of 2009 when Barack Obama took office, and possibly even before that. The reason why I believe that is something that we uncovered on our radio show, Operation Freedom, and put forward on March 19th, 2017, and immediately became targets of the deep state based on the facts that we produced. And here are the facts. That Barack Obama, along with John Brennan, his director of the CIA, and James Clapper, his director of national intelligence, instituted a platform, an illegal surveillance platform called the Hammer. The Hammer was run by an individual by the name of Dennis Montgomery. That platform illegally surveilled not just citizen Donald Trump and Michael Flynn and Team Trump, but millions of Americans, violated their Fourth Amendment rights. It monitored emails, phone calls, internet activities, and financial transactions. Dennis Montgomery finally got cold feet and he realized what he was doing was incredibly illegal and criminal. He went to authorities and turned himself in, actually went to the FBI. His attorney, Larry Klayman, who's a friend of ours and has been on our show and our platform a number of times, represented Dennis Montgomery. And Dennis Montgomery brought over 40 hard drives of documents documenting what he was tasked to do, who he was told to target, how many millions of Americans had their Fourth Amendment rights violated. He presented that under oath to the FBI, under deposition, under video deposition, it's my understanding. Wow. That information was transferred to the then director of the FBI, James Comey, who then realized, if he didn't before, but I'm sure he did, that millions of Americans were illegally surveilled. Yet, after he was aware of Dennis Montgomery's deposition and information he presented, testified in front of Congress that he was unaware of any illegal surveillance activities that the government had been involved in. That alone, Pastor Mike, should send him to prison.
Yeah.
Dennis Montgomery got cold feet. And what happened is that the Obama Justice Department and the Obama FBI and Obama himself, they all became concerned. Wait a minute. This guy is now talking. We have some problems here. Pastor Mike, because they realized they had problems, what they did is they then said, and it's always the cover-up that potentially can be worse than the crime. Although in this case, I'm not quite sure if it was the cover-up was worse. It's up there, but it's close. Photo finish. They launched in a cover-up, and the cover-up was, as this process was going on, Hillary Clinton was losing support. And they started to realize, wait a minute, Donald Trump might actually win, because their internal polls were drastically different than the propaganda that was being disseminated to the public through the bought-off lamestream fake media that is an arm of the globalist syndicate.
Yeah.
They became concerned. So they said, you know what? They're going to, if he gets in, there's evidence that we were surveilling people. We need to come up with a reason of why we were surveilling people. And that's when they hired Christopher Steele, Fusion GPS, created this fake Russian hack narrative that Bill Binney, a hero amongst freedom fighters as it relates to him being a whistleblower with the NSA, came forward and said, this was not a hack. There was somebody internally that downloaded this information and shot it over to WikiLeaks. This was not a hack. And then they created this fake Russian dossier because they needed something to go to the FISA court in order to get the warrant to surveil people, because they wanted people to believe that that's the first time they were surveilling people, rather than what they had been doing for years before. So what they then did is they utilized the FISA court. They weaponized it, just as Obama had weaponized the IRS through Lois Lerner and other individuals at the IRS. And then what they did is they launched our country on a path that could well have led to civil war, a constitutional crisis. And they had no qualms about that. And the reason is because their goal was to protect themselves. And the bonus that they were hoping to get is that Trump would not be able to fight back, and that he, in fact, would be removed from power. You see, when you boil all this down, Pastor Mike, what this really was all about is about sedition of a duly elected president of the United States, treason. We had people in the Obama administration working with foreign entities. Christopher Steele is the guy who had contacts with the Russian government. And by the way, Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS were paid for by the DNC, a law firm associated with the DNC, and the Clinton campaign. So if anybody is guilty of working with the Russians, colluding with the Russians, networking with the Russians in a treasonous manner, it's the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton. So this is really about sedition, treason, and covering up criminal violations of the Fourth Amendment by the Obama administration that negatively impacted millions of unsuspecting Americans. That also included Donald Trump, Michael Flynn, and Team Trump.
Yes. Wow. Wow. Folks, listen, that's just a small sampling of what you're going to get on Operation Freedom radio show, davejanda.com. Tune in Sundays, 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dave is a truth teller. He is a freedom fighter. He is out there giving information and data for people. And listen, you can listen to other folks, but I know Dave encourages his listeners to go out and research this for yourself. You don't have to believe a word he says. Go check it out for yourself. The information is out there. I appreciate what Devin Nunes said. He said, listen, this whole thing goes right back to Clinton Obama and dirty cops at the FBI. And Dave just laid it all out for you folks. Very nice and tight.
I think he's right on the money there, and he is an incredible patriot. But I believe this started, as I mentioned, long before 2015 and 2016.
Yeah,
this started long before that. And the bottom line is that what this country was put through. Imagine, Pastor Mike, all the things that could have been accomplished if we could have focused on border, healthcare, security, safety, the vets that are homeless on the street. Imagine all the time and effort we could have focused on those important issues rather than this goat rodeo that was created by these deep state players in order to protect themselves and to remove a president of the United States and also give cover to Hillary Clinton so she could blame a reason of why she lost. She lost because she was a poor candidate. People did not identify with her because they identified her as being a liar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very true. That's absolutely true.
Now, this isn't over yet, Pastor Mike, because I have William Barr's letter that he sent to Congress, and I think it's really important for our listeners to have an idea what's going on in this letter.
Yes.
There's a couple points I want to read that I believe are very important. Yes. Here's what Attorney General Barr says. The report does not recommend, the Mueller report, any further indictments, nor did the special counsel obtain any sealed indictments that have yet to be made public. Below, I summarize the principal conclusions set out in the special counsel's report as far as Russian interference. The special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. As the report states, quote, the investigation did not establish that members of the Russian campaign or the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. The second part, so there was no crime. There was no treason. Now, Pastor Mike, obstruction of justice. Mueller said, well, he didn't rule on obstruction of justice. He didn't prosecute, but he didn't exonerate the president. Pastor Mike, if there is no crime, which Mueller testifies to, that there was no treason between Trump, his campaign, and the Russians, if there was no crime, how can you obstruct justice? In order to obstruct justice, there has to be a crime.
Yes.
Mueller, in the first part, says there's no treason, there's no crime. Yet, Nadler, Pelosi, Schumer, you name it. Oh, there might be some obstruction issues. Well, not so much if you read Attorney General Barr's note. And here's what he says. This is what he sent to Congress. The report's second part addresses a number of actions by the president, most of which have been the subject of public reporting that the special counsel investigated as potentially raising obstruction of justice concerns. After making a thorough factual investigation in these matters, the special counsel considered whether to evaluate the conduct under department standards governing prosecution and declination decisions, but ultimately determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment. In other words, Mueller said there's no crime. But even on the obstruction issue, he didn't even take that information to a grand jury. It's been said, Pastor Mike, you can indict a ham sandwich in front of a grand jury because there is no defense. There's only one side of the argument presented. Anyone and everyone can get indicted before a grand jury.
Yes.
He didn't even take this information, Mueller, to a grand jury. It goes on. The special counsel's decision to describe the facts of his obstruction investigation without reaching any legal conclusions leaves it to the Attorney General to determine whether the conduct described in the report constitutes a crime. After reviewing the special counsel's final report on these issues, consulting with department officials, including the Office of Legal Counsel, the Office of Legal Counsel, and applying the principles of federal prosecution that guide our charging decisions, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who They all embraced this. Oh, this guy's tough. Oh, we can't let President Trump get rid of him. Oh, if that's trouble. We might have to impeach Trump if he gets rid of Rosenstein. So they all love Rosenstein. Well, wait a minute. Rosenstein and I have concluded that the evidence developed during the special counsel's investigation is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense. Our determination was made without regard to and is not based on the constitutional considerations that surround the indictment and criminal prosecution of a sitting president. In other words, there was no obstruction of justice. Now, the bought-off lamestream fake media, when they got wind of this on Friday, oh, Wolf Blitzer. You know, I had a laugh. Laura Jarrett, Valerie Jarrett, the handler, the deep state handler for Barack Obama for 8 years, who currently lives in his home, which is kind of odd, but we won't know. Laura Jarrett was the reporter. And Wolf Blitzer's like, well, this is really concerning, but they're going to be sealed indictments that aren't included in this, right, Laura? And she's like, well, no, Wolf, no sealed or unsealed. And it was like poor Wolf got upset. And we also saw how Rachel Maddow handled it, and we, the tears. And we also had Chris Matthews just blowing up on air.
Yeah,
and
physically distraught, Dave. Think about that. Physically distraught that your president isn't indicted.
Correct. Imagine that. Physically distraught that the president was not indicted. What does that tell you about what their focus was? Their focus was serving their masters in the deep state. Their focus was removal of a duly elected president. And Pastor Mike, I believe all these media hacks and the bought-off lamestream fake media should also be held accountable and possibly even brought up on sedition charges because they were willing accomplices.
Yes, I echo that. And I think everybody that's listening and watching, Dr. Dave, I think they agree with you 100%. I'd like to just clean house of all of them, bring all of them up on charges as they should be.
And that includes the deep state operatives, the middle level puppets. That includes Obama and Clinton and Brennan and Clapper and Jarrett and Yates and Comey and Lynch, Holder, all across the board.
Yes.
All across the board. And now you're going to see that Mueller will now be vilified by Nadler's already talking about, we want to bring him in and interrogate him. Well, interrogate. I mean, he had 2 years. He spent $25 million. I mean, in the beginning of Barr's note, he states that the special counsel employed 19 lawyers. By the way, those 19 lawyers, not one of them had supported Donald Trump. They had I believe they had donated to Hillary's campaign, the Clinton Foundation, the DNC, if not the majority, I think pretty much all of them. So he employed 19 lawyers who were assisted by a team of approximately 40 FBI agents, intelligence analysts, forensic accountants, and other professional staff. The special counsel issued more than 2,800 subpoenas, executed nearly 500 search warrants, obtained more than 230 orders for communication records, issued almost 50 orders authorizing use of pen registers, made 13 requests to foreign governments for evidence, and interviewed approximately 500 witnesses. For what? For a hoax that was perpetrated from Obama all the way down.
Yeah.
That paralyzed our country. That could well have led to civil war in our country and a constitutional crisis.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, Dave, and I want your thoughts on this. One of the things that I've wondered, especially recently, is how many scenarios did the Obamas, the Clintons, and all of these folks that you mentioned, how many scenarios did they play out? Did they strategize as possible false charges that would stand scrutiny, and decided, nope, that won't work either? Because they didn't just sit back and not do anything after this thing got rolling and snowballing. They had to have some kind of plan in place. Well, we'll put this on him, or we'll say this, or we'll develop this and create the story. at the end of the day, nothing. They found nothing, which tells me that they're a bunch of lying, thieving, seditious, treasonous people that should be in prison for a long, long time.
And there will be people, Pastor Mike, that say that, well, we should just move on. We should just bygones be bygones.
Yep, I can hear it now.
Mike, unless we restore the rule of law in this country, which the deep state has destroyed, and the middle level puppets, the Obamas, and this is not just a Democrat issue. We need to put the McCains, the Ryans, the Romneys, the Bushes, these players, they need to be put in that globalist deep state basket, because they are. I talk about the fact, and I get in a lot of trouble for this, Pastor Mike, there are not two political parties in Washington. There's one political party, the Republicans. And they're owned and operated by the same criminal syndicate, the deep state.
Amen. Amen.
And we need, if our country is to move forward, we must reinstitute the rule of law.
Yes.
Of which everyone is accountable. And moving on is not giving these people a pass. And that includes not only the perpetrators, but also we need to expand our view on this and looking at those in the media.
I agree.
That were accomplices, willing accomplices.
Yes, willing, with no evidence, just going on what they were told to report.
Making up evidence.
Correct. Yep.
Right? Making up. Oh, I mean, how many times, Pastor Mike, did we hear in the last 2 years, oh, it's a bombshell. This is going to destroy Trump. They're going to be, the family and President Trump is going to be let out of the White House in handcuffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, Dave, that the prior occupants should be in handcuffs.
Well, I would agree with you on that, and I believe there's ample evidence to show that in fact the criminal behavior of the Obama administration and many of the people in his administration, they should be held accountable. They should be held to a fair and just rule of law system that also involves, if you will, the jury system of peers evaluating the evidence.
How ironic, Dave, that the very system they tried to undermine and destroy is going to be the system that should be trying them, the rule of law.
Well, and many people say, well, I haven't seen anything yet. Oh, come on. You know, Pastor, this really gets under my skin. Because people aren't looking very hard if they're making statements like that.
That's right.
In the past 2 years, 28 officials, high officials, within the FBI and the Obama's former Department of Justice have either been fired, resigned, reassigned, or under investigation. That has never happened in our country's history.
Right.
In addition, Devin Nunes just came out. The House Intel Committee readies criminal referrals for Clinton operatives who perpetuated this hoax. We also have the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz. Oh, he was appointed under Obama. If you look at Michael Horowitz's testimonies before Congress, he is Obama's biggest nightmare. He presented much of this information that blew Hillary's emails out of the water. He has yet to produce and will produce the FISA investigation of how these FISA warrants were issued on unsuspecting people that weren't involved in collusion. And this was reported on Zero Hedge the day before Mueller's report came out on Friday. Department of Justice Inspector General confirms Michael Horowitz, his year-long investigation into FISA abuse is active. Justice Department Inspector Michael Horowitz confirmed Thursday, March 21st, his office is still investigating possible abuse of the Foreign Service Intelligence Surveillance Act by the Department of Justice and FBI in their investigation into President Trump and associates of a 2016 campaign. The revelation came during a panel discussion in Washington, D.C., when Horowitz was asked to divulge his biggest projects. Quote, "We have a FISA-related review that people might have heard about that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, asked us to take a look at." And then the moderator said, but we can't go any further than that. Add to that, we have the Senate Intelligence Committee recently came forward and said there was no collusion. And we have the House Intelligence Committee that's now issuing a report to Attorney General Barr to prosecute the perpetrators of this hoax. And then there's an individual by the name of John Huber, a prosecutor from Utah that Attorney General Sessions appointed. And many people said, well, first of all, he's not doing anything. Really? Because I have a letter here dated November 22nd, 2017, signed by Attorney General Sessions, directed to the Honorable John W. Huber, instructing him to investigate the email situation, how it was handled by the Department of Justice and FBI of Hillary Clinton's emails and of Uranium One. And recently, we had a picture of Huber meeting, this was on March 8th, meeting with Attorney General Barr in Attorney General Barr's office, and Huber tweeted about it. And here's what he said, quote, U.S. attorneys thoroughly enjoyed our time with Attorney General Barr this week. He is a solid, proven leader with a clear vision for the future. We will move forward with his priorities, hold offenders accountable, and advance the rule of law. Does that sound like somebody that's not doing anything?
That's fantastic, actually.
And on top of that, the sequence I have always heard from my sources. So for 30 years, I've been involved. Ronald Reagan brought me to Washington to work on healthcare policy. And over 30 years, I have developed these contacts in Washington. And that's one of those are some of the sources I use for my radio show, Operation Freedom, which you noted. It's also what we use on our platform, DaveJanda.com. We have a public side. We also have the subscription side, 30 cents a day, where I do other shows. Our show where I bring insiders forward to present information that the fake media will never present. I do a geopolitical analysis show. We have a Department of Advanced Research show. We have all these shows based on our sources that we've developed over 30 years. Wow. And these sources have said, first thing, Barr is going to get confirmed. Then Mueller's going to come out with his report that's going to exonerate the president. Okay, check one, check two. The third check, the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, is going to come forward with his FISA abuse analysis and investigation. And then Huber's stepping forward on the email investigation of how the Department of Justice and FBI handled Hillary's emails, as well as Uranium One. And then, and the only person who can do this is President Trump, then the declassification will hit. The declassification of Carter Page's FISA warrants, which will show abuse of the system. The 302 forms, the forms the FBI fills out of Bruce Orr. And the text messages and email messages between McCabe and Comey and Strzok and Page. And when these documents, as I understand it, are declassified, the whole thing blows up.
Sounds to me like, Dave, they've disarmed New Zealand just in time for a mass exodus from the United States into New Zealand.
Well, it makes one wonder, because there are a lot of deep state players that like to go to New Zealand.
That's for sure.
Right? I mean, recently, wasn't Hillary Clinton and John Podesta there? I think within several days of that event occurring.
Yep. Yes, I agree. Folks, listen, if you've got a question to ask Dr. Dave, then if you're on Facebook watching this live, put it in the comments section. We've got folks that are watching for those. Kathy will relay those. We're gonna answer your questions in just a second. If you're in the huddle and you have a question for Dr. Dave, then get ready. But before we do that, we want to do some announcements. I want to remind you folks that Occupy 2019 is coming up in April. Occupy 2019 in Canton, Ohio. And I would encourage you to go to CoachDaveLive.com and get your tickets. There it is, April 12th, 13th, and 14th in Canton, Ohio. Get the tickets right there on that website. Fantastic lineup of speakers there. John Diamond, Bradley Dean, Mark Trump, Tom Dunn, Russ Dizdar, Chad Estes, David Arthur, Coach Dave, and I will be there, as well as Mark Harrington. Won't want to miss that. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tonight at 8 o'clock, you don't want to miss David Heavener's live show. 8 o'clock, davidheavener.tv. You can watch that on Roku as well. And I also want to, I've got a friend in the queue today, Larry Richardson. Larry, you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Larry, appreciate what you're doing with Sound the Alarm Brigade. Sound the Alarm Brigade, folks, is something you need to check out. You can go to soundthealarmbrigade.com. Larry, tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, last May, almost a year ago now, it just dropped on my heart and spirit that our country has got to do something to stop the incursion of Islam, and especially the Sharia aspect of Islam, into our nation. We can just, all we have to do is look over the northern border into Canada. We can look at Europe. We can look at the Indonesian peninsula down through there. We can look anywhere where Islam has spread out to in Africa, no matter where it is. And we can see the results of their getting their tentacles into the culture and governments of the countries that they go into. And we're not going to be different than the rest of the world if we keep doing the same thing the rest of the world did when Muslims started coming into their country. Now, some people say I'm anti-Muslim. Well, I'm only anti-Muslims if they adhere to the Muslim doctrine of Sharia, because that Muslim doctrine of Sharia does not leave an option for us to stay us. It means when they come into our country, it is their duty. They must change us to their way. That's their doctrine. And we've got to stop it. And I realize that our politicians are not even going to tackle this situation. They're not even going to look at the problem. They're not going to look for an answer to stop it until we make them, because politicians on their own do not tackle the difficult problems. That's just plain and simple. So I started an organization called Sound the Alarm Brigade. We need to create an army, a public opinion army of Paul Reveres all across this country that will get conversations started everywhere, at the water hole at the workplace, the concession stand at the football game, wherever we're at, whatever we're doing. Start a conversation about what's going to happen to our country if we don't find a way to stop Sharia from taking over. And that's the purpose of STAB, is to get the conversations to going, find different ways to get it in the newspapers, find different ways to get it, even if they talk bad about us, even if they call us haters, and they do, even if that happens, at least it gets the subjects out there, the subject matter out there. And there's a whole lot of great groups around that are educating the public on what's happening with Sharia coming into our country. And there are also, groups that have good ideas about what to do about it, and little pieces of legislation that could be passed that would help stop it. But like I said, those politicians out there are not even going to look at those ideas until they are forced to. And STAB is not trying to say this is how we're going to fix it. STAB is just saying we've got to create such a hubbub, we've got to create such a conversation going on around the country that our politicians will be forced to look at the problem. Then it's time for all those great groups out there to present their idea, to present their suggestions, and let the politicians go through and figure out which ones will work and which ones don't. And hopefully they'll come up with a good answer. But they're not even going to try to come up with an answer unless we force them to do it. Now, I'm going to put the link to my website in here. All you got to do is sign up. It doesn't cost anything, no dues or anything.
Perfect. Perfect. So Larry's going to put that in the huddle notes. There's a link there. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that very much. Folks, I would encourage you also, you can be very effective in challenging some of the things that are going on in America today by just attending school board meetings. Because whether you know it or not, or whether you have children or not, this is being introduced at the elementary school level. I don't think that's news to anyone. And so I think that's a good place to start. All we need to do is look at the Congress that was just seated to see we've got problems, because they're in the gates. They're not just in our communities. They're not just developing no-go zones now. Police departments will tell you this. And Dr. Dave knows this. He lives in Michigan. But they're also, folks, they are also in our Congress. And they are there, and they have an agenda. And it isn't to strengthen, support, or remind us of the great privileges and freedoms we have under the Constitution. That is not their goal. I hope you understand that.
Pastor Mike,
Finally, yes.
there was over 200 Muslims ran for office for elected political positions in the United States in 2018. 66 of them won.
Wow. Wow. That's a pretty good percentage, actually, Larry. That's a real good percentage. I didn't know it was that high. Thank you for that. All right, Jared, one final thing. Go Therefore 2019, Go Therefore Conference 2019 is coming up in Lima, Ohio, here in Lima. We're hosting this July 26th and 27th, and it is going to be the 28th, 26th and 27th at the University of Northwestern Ohio Event Center. And then the 28th, we'll have it at our church, Calvary Chapel of Lima, to wrap up the conference. You can go to the website there, get your tickets. They're $59. And listen, folks, this is a conference you do not want to miss. I have got, well, I didn't lay it out. I've got 20 speakers lined up to be here. You do not want to miss this. This is going to start off, Mark Sutherland, a British filmmaker coming over from England. Dr. Michael Lake, there's an announcement. I haven't had time to put that out on social media yet, but Dr. Michael Lake is joining us. Leighton Howerton, Jamie Walden, Chad Schaefer, John Haller, L.A. Marzulli, Mark Harrington, Tom Dunn, Doug Woodward, and a whole bunch, thank you, Dr. Carl Gallups, David Arthur, Russ Dizdar, Coach Dave will be there, Mark Trump, David Paxton, and that dude there. So, July 26th and 27th, you can go to the website, gothereforeconference.com, gothereforeconference.com, and get your tickets. This will sell out, folks, so don't wait. There's also hotel information there. We do have some rates at a couple of different places in town. You'll probably want to get those accommodations booked as soon as you can. All right, questions. Let's go to questions. Kathy, I know that you have several there. Instead of me getting in the queue and try to read them, why don't you ask those questions of Dr. Dave?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Janda, what will we see next as far as actions taken by the deep state, the DNC? Because we know they're not going to quit.
Well, that's a great question, Kathy. Many people have been really upset the fact that President Trump on September 17th, 2018, outlined that he wanted to declassify the documents we spoke about before. And here we are in March of 2019, 6 months later, and they're not declassified.
Yeah.
The main reason I believe they're not declassified is actually the answer to your question. I believe back in September, after the president asked for them to be declassified, then they started to be slow walked. And as they were being slow walked, and that's when Attorney General Sessions was relieved of his duties, I believe President Trump and his team came to the realization that there were counter moves that the deep state were intent on making upon the declassification of the documents, and that they had not negated that counterattack by the deep state. And I believe what has been going on the past 6 months is that President Trump and his team have been negating these counter moves by the deep state. That's why I say that President Trump is the one person who can declassify all these documents. I believe he will do that when he believes the deep state has been negated across the board and that millions of Americans are not put in harm's way. You can put nothing past these deep state players. Yeah. I can tell you in a word to describe the deep state and the players in the deep state, and I mean this, and people think this is hyperbole. It's not. They're evil. Yeah. And they will do anything and everything to maintain power. And if that means a large loss of life of Americans or people around the world, they will not bat an eye in doing that. And people have to realize who our enemy is. This is the biggest and most important part of winning a war. You have to know your enemy. what your enemy is capable of, and what your enemy's strengths and weaknesses are. President Trump is a student of Sun Tzu, the great Chinese general. What you're seeing is President Trump implementing many of the logistics, many of the philosophies of Sun Tzu, so that the freedom movement can win this war. So what to anticipate from the deep state? Don't put a large false flag, a large terror event, or many terror events. Don't put that out of the realm of possibilities. And I believe what's happening and why this has taken so long to get to the declassification is because the president and his team are neutralizing what the deep state can do in their counterattack.
Yeah. 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 Great answer. Great answer. Thank you, Dr. Dave. Kathy and others?
All right. I think he pretty much answered this question, but do you think that Clinton and Obama or Comey or any of them will ever be indicted?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I don't believe they're going to be the first ones indicted.
Okay.
I truly believe, based on the contacts I have, I believe one of the first people that will be indicted is former director of the CIA, John Brennan, who was one of the individuals who actually who came up with this fake Russian hoax narrative in order to lead to the removal of President Trump. Remember, and I saw a question come across, somebody had asked on the little flip up that comes up about foreign government involvement. It was John Brennan who was the go-between to GCHQ, which is the intelligence division, the NSA equivalent in the UK. It was John Brennan who had ties into the Five Eyes organization in Australia and New Zealand, in addition to Canada, in addition to the UK, as far as networking this, hatching this plot and networking it amongst other governments and amongst other intelligence agencies. It was John Brennan, remember, that was one of the principals in the Hammer program. It's John Brennan who's been screaming the loudest about how President Trump would be indicted. As of just a couple weeks ago, was screaming that. Those who scream, mom and dad taught me, those who scream the loudest are the ones who tend to be the most guilty. And he's screaming like a banshee. And I truly believe he will be one of the first people prosecuted. I do not believe that Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama will be getting a pass. And
boy, I hope that's right.
People believe that's hopium, that's not accurate. No, I believe the Clintons will go down, much like Al Capone went down on tax evasion charges. I believe they will go down as it relates to the Clinton Foundation. And all you have to do is go back to C-SPAN and watch two investigators, Moynihan and Doyle, testify in front of a congressional committee on December 13th. Where they dissected the Clinton Foundation, and their conclusions were that between $450 million and $2.5 billion was laundered illegally through the Clinton Foundation. That was their conclusions.
Wow. Man.
So I believe the Clintons will go down, but I believe they're going to go down as it relates to the Clinton Foundation. And Obama, I believe, will be linked, because remember, Lisa Page's testimony was recently leaked.
Yeah.
And in that testimony, she said a number of different things. But one of the things she stated, and she confirmed, because there was a text message that she had that the Inspector General had unearthed that said, quote, "The White House wants to direct this," end quote. And I believe it will come out that President Obama, in his presidential daily briefings, was getting information on, if you will, the status of the fake Russian hoax narrative and how it was being implemented.
Michael?
Wow. Yes. Yes.
Could I ask a quick question today?
Yes. Yep. Go right ahead, Roger.
Dave, would you agree that after one or two people, be it Brennan or one other person, once those indictments come out, will they not have already been talking to 4 or 5 other people to play ball?
Oh, Roger, I believe that they've already been talking to hundreds of people that are playing ball. And here's these people are criminals. But you know what? They're not the criminals of Hell's Angels, right? These are, if you will, lightweight criminals. And these individuals, the Obamas of the world, the Clintons of the world, the Brennans, the Clappers of the world, will turn in a minute to save themselves. They aren't the tough mafia people. They aren't the tough drug cartel people that won't snitch on each other. If they can save their rear ends, if they believe they can save their rear ends, they will throw anyone and everyone under the bus. And I believe that's happening.
No, and that was kind of my point, and you're right. But I think the indictments of 1 or 2 people, I think will get the ball rolling for cooperation, you know, down the road, I hope.
Well, and see, I believe that they're not going to stop with the middle-level puppets. Many people believe the Obamas, the Clintons, the Bushes, that they're the top of the food chain. They're not. They're middle-level puppets. The top of the food chain is when you start getting into the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Lazards, the Pinkuses, the Warburgs, the criminal international banking syndicate. That's the top of the food chain. And I believe President Trump and the people around President Trump are not going to stop with the middle-level puppets. I believe they're going to go as high up into the food chain and try to take the entire food chain out, because they know if they don't, that evil empire will reassert itself somewhere down the line and put our country in harm's way yet again.
Yeah. Praise God. I hope that happens. Now, other questions, Kathy?
Yes, I got one in the huddle here. Can you speak to the fact that it's unconstitutional, not to mention a bad idea, to release the Mueller report because no one was charged with a crime?
So what you're saying, the question is that it's not a bad idea not to release the report?
Hey, Paul, jump in there.
My question was, I hear some conservatives calling to release the Mueller report, but I've heard other people say that it's actually a bad idea to do that because no one has been charged with a crime. Therefore, you're releasing dirty laundry that it's unconstitutional to do so.
Right.
If that makes any sense to you.
So if you look at the special counsel statute, the special counsel was to turn the report over to the attorney general, which he did. The attorney general could keep it completely private. Say, investigation's over, everybody do your deal. Attorney General Barr at his confirmation hearing said, look, I get that report, I'm going to get a summary, and I'm going to get it to Congress, and I'm going to get a summary to the public. Well, he's already done that. Now you have people saying, well, he has to release the entire report. And Nadler is saying not just the entire report, but all the evidence that was accumulated behind it. I do believe what's going to happen here is Attorney General Barr, Mueller has already said, there's no treason here. There's no collusion with the Russians. There's nothing there. You can't indict anybody. And Mueller also said that he could not indict President Trump or anyone around him for obstruction of justice. And the reason is, as I mentioned earlier, to have obstruction of justice, you have to have a crime. In the first part, Mueller said there was no crime. So how can you obstruct justice if there is no crime? So I believe what's going to happen is Attorney General Barr, after he meets with a number of individuals and makes sure that all the classified stuff's out of there, he's not going to release all the evidence. Forget it. That's just Nadler trying to spin. Well, we didn't see everything. Come on. I mean, up until Friday, Mueller was their savior. Mm-hmm. It was gonna end it. It was done. Yeah. You know, everything he said was golden. Then all of a sudden, whoa, not so golden. Wait a minute. Well, and so I believe Attorney General Barr is going to give the appearance that he's going the extra mile. And that extra mile is he's going to release portions of the report Okay. And maybe a good chunk of the report, because he knows there's no smoking gun there. But this criticism, the people that are criticizing, Republicans and Democrats, are deep state play. Anyone who criticized the Attorney General for saying, oh, he didn't release enough, they're telling you they're owned and operated by the deep state, because they're being told to do that by the deep state, and that's who they are not looking out for the welfare of the country. Because all Attorney General Barr had to do was say, reports in, nothing happening. He's already gone the extra mile with what he's done, and I think he'll go another extra mile. But I believe he's not going to produce volumes of evidence that was accumulated over time.
Yeah. Wise. Kathy, any other questions on the social media sites?
I'm not seeing any, no.
Okay. And folks, anybody in the queue have a question for Dr. Janda?
Absolutely. Hey, Dr. Janda, I want to thank you for being the only other person besides myself to call the media the propaganda arm of the deep state. I actually refer to them as the scumbags, but you know what I mean.
Right.
What you said about the criminals and not letting them escape justice is absolutely right. Because one thing I write in my blog all the time is, when you allow criminals to escape punishment, it emboldens them to worse crimes. And this is exactly what we've seen with Hillary Clinton, with Bathhouse Barry, with Brennan, with all these freaks. So I would advocate rope and a nice tree, but that's not very loving. So what I would instead advocate would be to put each and every one of them in the stocks and have rotten GMO fruit thrown at them for a couple of days and record it.
Well, here's what I and I understand where you're coming from, Vincent.
Yes.
If I actually, and I know this sounds maybe counterintuitive, I wish them all a very long life.
Me too. Me too.
But not a happy life.
Right.
Exactly. The longer they live, I want them humiliated on a minute-by-minute basis, and them being held accountable and chastised by the general public for what they did to harm every American and every person of the world by what they did.
Yes.
Bravo. Because think about
because it's too quick. It's too quick the other way, right? It's too quick.
Right.
Now,
what they did to Seth Rich was horrible, and they should not get away with that, because we all know it had nothing to do with Russia. It was Seth Rich and Keith and Kim.com, and they transferred it locally via USB. I can prove that, being a real computer guy, not some paper tech like Imran Awan or something like that.
Well, and just look at what they did in Benghazi. Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things we broke open on Operation Freedom is we brought forward Charles Woods, Ty Woods, who was one of the 4 Americans died in Benghazi. We had Charles come forward. Folks can go to our Operation Freedom YouTube channel.
That was
that interview. And then we brought a whistleblower by the name of Travis forward, who saw that first interview and says, look, I can't be silent anymore. I need to come forward. Where Travis outlines the stand down orders.
Yeah.
They were told to stand down and not rescue these people. And the reason is because they were hanging Stevens and every one of those Americans out to dry, because they had to tie up loose ends, because Benghazi was a weapons running operation run by the Obama administration, Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
Money. Everything always about money with that idiot.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Dr. Dave, believe it or not, our hour is over, and I would love if I could have you come back on and we could pick up where we left off and talk about some of these other things. Folks, DaveJanda.com, DaveJanda.com. For $9 a month, listen, you can get premium content. Premium content, only subscribers get 30 cents a day. $9 a month. That is correct, isn't it, Dave?
That is correct. And with that, they get the podcast to the show. They get the extra shows that we do, the geopolitical show, the Insider Insight show, the Department of Advanced Research show. They get our contributing editors. They get our health care symposium and the like. So and also they can always, for the free side, they can go to our YouTube channel, Operation Freedom. I upload 1 YouTube a week there, usually on Tuesday mornings.
There you have it, folks. I'm going to go and subscribe right after this show. I encourage you to do the same. And while I'm thinking about it, Jared, I'd appreciate your support for this show. drmikelive.com, you can go to our website, and there is a place there that you can donate to support what we're doing here, this platform and conferences and everything that's happening. Appreciate your support. It's very, very kind of you to do so. Remember, folks, renewing our minds is not an option. I'll see you next week. God bless.